Hey everyone, Anders Sundquist here, founder of Flawless Recruit and host of the Lean In podcast. And today I'm very grateful to have David Kingsley, Chief People Officer at Illumio, here with me. And we're going to be talking about people trends in tech today. Boy, we're going to touch on a lot of topics from RTO to DEI and everything in between. So buckle up, it's going to be a lot of fun. But before we dive deep, David, why don't you give us a little background on your career in the people space in tech and where you're at today?
Hey, Anders. Well, I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much. And first of all, most importantly, thank you for what you do for our industry. You are driving a very important part of the dialogue that I think is critical for us to progress this thing all together and tackling tough topics, having courageous conversations, speaking the unspoken, saying the unsaid, I think is really important for us to drive forward. And so thank you for curating and being part of that ecosystem. That's super important. And on behalf of my colleagues in this industry, thank you for doing that. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you. Yeah. And thanks for spending the time with us today, talking about some of these topics. They might get interesting. There's some things changing in the industry, and you have some words of wisdom that I really appreciated coming into this call. So I'm
Yeah, no,
excited to
my
unpack it
pleasure
with you.
and my pleasure. Well, I mean, certainly my first and most important job, let me just say, is spouse and wife, or husband and partner to my wife, Erin. That's my first and most important job. And then a very close one to that is a father to our three kids, to
Well
Jack and Kate
said.
and Maddie. We got three toddlers, so they may or may not make a cameo appearance. Sometimes that happens. I'm actually working out of my home office today, and not my other office near the house, based upon obviously the holidays coming up and getting some things done here. So, but I think we're in an era now where everyone just expects that, and that's been a good shift, I think, in society and in the work world, generally, which I think is a good thing, that we can have some flexibility and agility for stuff like that. So that's my all the time job, most important job. My day job, and sometimes my evening job and weekend job maybe, is the chief people officer at a company called Illumio, and we're a zero trust segmentation company. And so what we do is we help to acknowledge the fact with our customers that cybersecurity is very much top of mind for lots of companies, and cyber attacks and ransomware are a part of daily life. So it's not really a question of if a company or an organization is going to get attacked. It's a matter of when. And we all know that. You can open the newspaper or your own personal inbox right now, or even your phone, and see cybersecurity and ransomware attacks happening in real time every day in our lives. And so what Illumio does is we control east-west movement, lateral movement. Once an attacker has made their attack, how far do they get inside your network or on your endpoints, and how long does it take you to know that they're there, and how much damage can they do? And so segmentation essentially sets up a lot of the protocols that allow companies and organizations to defend themselves once an attack happens, minimize the blast radius, and then get back on the path to recovery more quickly. Oftentimes, not having to pay a ransomware attacker because the attack is so contained and constrained based upon blocking in the lateral movement. So old school version was, let's build the highest, thickest, best firewall and keep all the bad guys out. We all know that that's not a thing anymore. The bad guys are going to get in, and sometimes, unfortunately, bad actors are inside of our organizations. Insider threat is a real thing. So firewalls are no longer adequate to protect us from that. So we do both visibility and enforcement in terms of cybersecurity for our customers.
Right, right. And I remember when we were unpacking, how Illumio is different and how you think about things from a security perspective. Of course, that firewall mindset is almost archaic at this point, and the zero trust breach
Mm-hmm.
differentiator, for Illumio, and we actually kind of threaded that into the people space and kind of some
Mm-hmm.
of the infiltration we're seeing with
Yeah.
interviews. We're going to unpack a little bit about that, but before,
Mm-hmm.
for our listeners today, so people, tech leaders, founders, and people running a tech organization are going to really tune in to some of the topics we talk about. So let's set the stage with your people org. So,
Mm-hmm.
how big is it? How many people roll up to you? And then let's unpack a little bit about some of the security breaches we're seeing in the people space.
Yeah, sure. So we're a company's about 650 people right now, total in the organization. I've got about 25 in HR proper, and that includes everything from talent acquisition all the way through to benefits, compensation, HR business partners, et cetera. I do not have real estate workplace services inside my org in this company. Sometimes it's in or out depending upon the organization, but so I'm more of a classic HR function with HR VPs and L&D and all those good things that we consider to be part of HR shops. Yeah, about 25 people in New York.
So now some of the fun stuff. So we're kind of talking about people trends in tech, and one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that when we first chatted, came up was fraud. I'm hoping you can tell our listeners today what you're seeing at Illumio
Mm-hmm.
specifically, and kind of how your mindset as a security company approaches this.
Hmm.
And then any advice for people and talent leaders tuning in today about how they can respond or be prepared for fraud, whether it's fraud with job applicants or people impersonating a company
Hmm.
with a fake
Yeah.
job posting. We're
Yeah.
seeing everything in between here. So tell us, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think it's kind of it's a wild west right now in terms of that space, and I think my key watchword there, the headline is expect the unexpected. If you can be attacked in some way, it's going to happen, and it may happen because of a bad actor directly with a live person on the other end of it, but it could happen with a bad actor controlling a bot or a bot farm. And so now with the introduction of AI, and we've seen some of it even come out this week from some of the neural network, advancements that have been made, which are both amazing and scary at the same time, that the attacks now are inexpensive. Whereas before you had to have a human attacker doing own person on the keyboard, working the mouse, writing code, running an attack. Those days are over. The attacks can now be automated and proliferated very, very quickly. And so thinking about what is the attack surface from a people perspective in the organization, and it starts everywhere, frankly, even to how our employees are reviewing us or giving feedback online. So we think about the glass doors and the blinds. There are, unfortunately, and I think a lot of your listeners and followers know this and have seen it, there are unfortunately bot farms that can be paid to attack companies' reputations. And
Yeah,
so oftentimes the things that are getting written about our companies and reviewed about our companies are not actually real people at the other end of that. They can be manufactured or AI assisted, such that someone somewhere, a competitor, a bad actor, someone who has had a bad day, whatever, is doing those. And so it really starts at that and on employer branding. So how are you really owning your employer brand from how you tell your story to the market, employee value proposition, all the way to the platforms that use the social media outreach, et cetera, of making sure that your voice is louder, clearer, more authentic, and stronger than anybody else's, because the bad actors are going to try and do that. And so I think when you have a strong digital footprint as a company, as an organization, that is established and credible, people know that that's the real deal. And when things that come
right.
along that are not the real deal, you are already out there. If you don't have that and it starts and you're playing catch up, you're now on equal or lesser footing than the bad actors. And that's tough because you're playing a couple pegs down on the board at that point. So the criticality of getting out in front of that, really defining what is our brand, how do we talk to the market, how do we talk to our candidates, to our applicants, to our new hires, to our employees, our current employees, how do we talk to our alumni? That's critical in terms of having that voice. And that's a good partnership with the marketing department, knowing that the stronger and more established that is, the more defensible you will be if and when that attack happens. So that's kind of the first one. And the second one is really, I think, and Anders, you alluded to it, is our candidates are now assisted by AI. Like you can have a lot of
End to
technology
end.
riding alongside you on the other monitor, literally giving you the answers to the questions that the interviewer is asking. And on the one hand, I think if someone is proficient enough to align that technology, utilize it in real time to do their job, that's actually not a bad thing. Because I'm expecting today that every single person inside of Illumio is using AI and LLMs to do their job. It should be it's human assisted, right? It's like those power assisted bikes that everybody has now. I can't pedal that fast, but I can ride a bike with some help and go faster and farther with that. And so I don't look at it as a totally a bad thing if somebody's getting some help with AI or LLMs to interview or write the resume or prepare for interviews. It's showing me they know how to use the technology. And then how do they perform with the technology? Now, on the other side of that, you can also create a total, generated David Kingsley, a generated LDK, which I assume would look better and have hair. But he could come and do
He's
this
some
interview.
bangs.
Some bangs. And he could come and do this interview. And
Yeah.
the technology is getting good enough that you might say, gosh, was that real, or was that a replica or a bot of David or a manufactured version of him? So that is where it gets a little scary, that we could, because a lot of companies are fully virtual,
Yes.
interview a fake person in a real set of interviews, have real documentation, put it all in our ATS, hire the person, get a bank account, pay them. They start working for the company, could actually start producing things for the company,
Yes.
products, deliverables, et cetera. Whereupon that just kind of blows your mind that there could be a bot farm that just does that, applies for jobs, gets jobs, and then performs jobs for an organization that the company's on the wiser. So I like to think more on the practical application side about how are candidates using that. And I think it's a fair question to start asking candidates. How have you leveraged AI or LLMs to prepare for these interviews, to apply to our company? Tell me about that.
Interesting.
And do
Interesting.
that in earnest to say, we want that. We want people who are aligned that way. So tell me how you're using that. And that's also kind of a full disclosure thing. So that's the second one. The third one, and this is more, I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on TV. Our friends in the legal department can weigh in on that. So don't take this as legal advice. However, I do think it's important, and we're doing it right now. We're in the process of doing it right now in Illumio. There are a couple other companies that have, not a lot, who are putting in their ATS front end, when an applicant applies for a job, we're being very, very explicit. Before the person actually clicks submit, there are checkboxes and an attestation that says, I understand that an offer of employment from Illumio will come through DocuSign. It'll be signed by our CEO. That is the
Right.
only way we give offers. And oh, by the way, another checkbox that as an applicant, you are agreeing to our arbitration clause as an applicant.
Wow.
And that's not quite yet very broadly used in the industry. However, we've started to do it. We're putting it in place right now, such that we want our candidates to attest to the fact that if something goes sideways, and it rarely ever does, and heaven
Yes.
hope it doesn't, but if it does, and we have a difference of opinion or an issue that arose in the application process, that you are agreeing to use arbitration to settle whatever dispute you might have as a candidate of the company. Again, I hope never to use it. It's so rare because of the nature of society and where we've gotten and where we're going. Sometimes people can be very litigious and think that they've been wronged in a way that there was not a wrong at all. It was just simply, hey, there was a better candidate, more qualified, we changed our mind, whatever. We want to make sure that there's an upfront agreement that we're not going to get each other tangled up in a bunch of legal processes, that we're going to let you go about your life as a candidate and hope you get a great job somewhere and do wonderful things. We're going to keep running our company, and if it doesn't work out that we don't work together, so be it. Let's keep in touch. So we're taking that step. So there's kind of the three things that it's less AI related, but the barriers to being litigious have dropped. There are more and more plaintiffs' attorneys who are taking advantage of those opportunities. They are AI assisted, so they're filing lawsuits, they're filing plaintiffs' claims. They are getting a lot faster at that. They can take on more clients. Therefore,
Yeah.
clients who perceive that something happened to them, whatever, they can take advantage of that more quickly. And so, just being mindful of the acceleration on that part of the business, that we have taken a step to think about the arbitration clause element, and reminding candidates that they're not going to get a job offer from anybody but us through DocuSign with our CEO's
Yes.
signature on it, full stop. So
Yeah, well said. And I think kind of in summary, from bottom up is if you're tuning in today and curious, how to protect yourself, one is optimizing the application process, as you said, almost a release of liability type
mm-hmm.
consent form, which is new information to me. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's
Yeah.
really valuable. Furthermore, I have personal friends, and he's probably tuning in and going to laugh when I share. I'll blur the name, but people have been spoofed by fake job offers, given their credit card information for onboarding equipment, and then never to hear of this fake company job offer again, losing $3,000 to $10,000 for their machinery or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
might be. So if you are actively looking for roles, passively or actively, and you're in that offer stage, remember to look at the email, the official DocuSign. It should be at company.com, not
Mm-hmm.
a spoofed address. So that's one
Mm-hmm.
simple way to protect yourself. Also, coming back to the front end, if you're tuning in today and you're a TA leader, a people leader, or, an individual contributor, is perhaps incorporating those screening questions, like you said, and how have you used AI in your interview process, and embracing that and incorporating it rather than shunning it. That might be the new normal that we see in people today. So great information, and definitely a new normal that we're in. And this all
Yeah.
happened really quickly. This is in the past 12 months. This has happened, right?
Easily. Yeah, easily. And I think if somebody were to say to me in that question, I didn't use it at all, I'm going to go, huh, okay. Because what I would say, I'd go over to ChatGPT or Grok and say, hey, crawl this website and produce me a one pager on the things I need to know about this company and prominent things in the last month. Why would I not do that? I mean,
Yeah.
make me
Well, and in
smart.
fact, if they're going to join a company who's embracing AI to reduce manual tasks, then how can they adapt quickly in an
Right.
environment that's using
Yeah.
Copilot, that's using
Yeah.
features like that? So well
Yeah.
said.
So to the applicants out there, if you don't have an answer to that question, I encourage you to go get one quickly,
Yeah.
and it'll accelerate your
Yeah. Yeah. And so the job hunt on both ends is being shifted by another categorical change in how we hire, and that is RTO. So if you're not familiar with that term, that is return to office. I had TA leader friend yesterday, want that clarified. And I realized folks might not always know. So return to office is changing daily. Tell us Illumio's position and your personal thoughts on, maybe what the right status is for RTO. Let's talk about Illumio today. And then your personal thoughts on how this is changing the people space.
Yeah. All right, Anders. Well, I'm gonna get a little spicy here, okay? And I might get
Not the sizzle.
some sand thrown at me on the HR playground for saying this. And I like to go back to the basic principles and questions, kind of first principles on this thing. That human beings, we as human beings, we have not fundamentally changed as a species in, I don't know, 50,000 years, 100,000 years, the anthropologists will tell me.
Wow.
We've not fundamentally changed. And even if you think about during COVID, during full lockdown, right? You probably did this. I know I did. Celebrating your birthday on Zoom. Like, someone FedExes you like a cupcake or something. You put a candle in it, and there you are with people on a camera, and you're like, happy birthday to me. You're like, snooze. We disliked that intensely. And the first thing we did when we were given any ability to get together again was we formed our little pods. Who's in your pod? Okay, that's my pod. These are the 5 people. We only see each other, whatever. And we got together, and oftentimes it was family and close friends, etc. And we celebrated together. We came together to share space, to be human together. And what did we do? We ate together. We talked together. We cried together. We laughed together. We did human things in real life presence, human form. And so that's our core of our human behavior. We are drawn to share space together. Somewhere along the line, we, the royal we, have decided that when humans are working versus doing regular other human things, they don't need to be together. Did I become less human just because who started from 9 o'clock on a Monday morning? Because at 6 a.m. this morning, I was pretty human, helping my kids get ready for school and, doing whatever around the house. Like, I was very human. I was the same human at 9 o'clock as I was at 6 o'clock. So the idea that we humans, when working, no longer need to be together in physical form, I think is incorrect. I do. I think it runs counter to the nature of the human species. The being, the animal, needs to share space together. We need to gather around a fire and cook food. Maybe meat, but for the vegetarians out there, maybe a little tofu, maybe some halloumi. We need to gather together to break bread, to share space. So this idea of, fully remote is the way of the future. We don't need to have physical offices. We don't need to get together. I disagree with that. Just candidly, I take a very different opinion of that. Now, where I do have I think a nuanced point of view is, how often do we need to do that? And this is where my answer to your RTO question comes to play. Do I think we need to be in the office 9 to 5, Monday through Friday? No, I'm not right now. I'm at my house. I came home. I'm doing some things. It's getting ready to be the holidays here. So I'm doing this podcast from my home office. I have a different office. I work out of. Sometimes I also work up in San Francisco. So I travel to my job every week on an airplane. And so I am, by definition, a hybrid worker. I'm in the corporate office sometimes, I'm in a remote office sometimes, and I'm in my home office sometimes.
Yeah.
That said, we at Illumio have done something we call defined hybrid. And it's more than where some companies are right now, and they say, oh, we want you to come in, 2 to 3 days a week. That's great. We've said, not only do we want you to come in, you are coming in if you're headquarters based, and here are the days. So for example, the people team, my team, is in the office Mondays and Tuesdays. We have some people who are in Wednesdays and Thursdays on my team also to provide coverage, but our core days are Mondays and Tuesdays, and those are the days you're expecting in the office. Finance, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. The product team, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Everybody has their assigned date. So there's no ambiguity about, should I be in there? When should I be in there? How often? Who's going to be there? We've taken all that off the table. And what it's done, and we've got this in the data from our employee engagement surveys that I've now got 3 of them data sharing this, that people appreciate the clarity, and they love the fact that it embraces the human element, again, of the criticality of gathering as human beings. Now, again, doesn't mean 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. We all did those jobs, mega commutes, and doing those before there was Spotify and Waze and all that. We just, had to do it. I don't think that's the way of the world. Certainly not anymore. And I think we learned a lot of things in COVID, in the lockdown, that we can and should be applying now of how we do work. And also, when does deep work happen? When do we need to be in person for one-on-ones, team meetings, all hands, et cetera? I call those moments that matter, and making sure that we're gathering for moments that matter. So I'm not going to put an all hands meeting on a Thursday when I know my team are generally remote. I'm going to put it on a Tuesday when we're all together. And so being judicious about that while at the same time being super clear about what those days are in the office, I think
Yes,
has
that's
taken a
key.
lot of pressure off of the employees knowing, well, what am I supposed to be doing? And frankly, the first line managers, right? The first thing you hear from them is like, just tell me what you want me to do. Like, stop making me guess and try
Yes,
and
yes,
divine the mind of corporate. Just tell me what you
yeah.
want. So it's taken a lot of that off the radar as well. So how does that do? Give you some color there.
That's a brilliant response. And I would use the word orchestration for how hybrid is working. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing hybrid or return to office fail where there's not a synchronized, deliberate, articulated approach. So let me elaborate. So what I just heard from you is that you have almost a schedule where folks from different orgs align their RTO visits because they get more done, there's more collaboration, and they know when they'll be in the office, and it's not a wasted effort. So what I'm hearing from hybrid, where there's organizations receiving some pushback, is they'll have an arbitrary day count, like attendance, 2 or 3 days a week, and then you show up when you want. And then people in different divisions, say people or product, show up. No one from their team's there, and the meetings happen with a split of a Zoom and a board table with a few people sprinkled around it, and they're like, "What the heck?" So I think the key here, if you're tuning in and you're curious how to optimize your RTO strategy, you touched on one thing was the surveys and the data, but also consider the orchestration and consider a message around why we're doing this. So that change management piece. And I'm seeing that work.
Mm-hmm.
I will say on both extreme ends, I am seeing some folks embrace full remote and embrace full RTO. I think Amazon is an example of a FANG company that's had some dramatic pushback, and some folks have labeled that there's skepticism around why that might be happening. No comment, but 5 days RTO is one choice companies are making for different reasons. And then the full remote piece, I'm seeing that be a recruiting strategy for some, larger TAM. We have the whole
Mm-hmm.
country now versus
Yeah.
geos. But I'm also seeing remote companies be the ones, and this ties back to our earlier topic, peppered with fraud. So full
Mm-hmm.
remote jobs are the ones with a lot of
Mm-hmm.
foreign bad actors that are
Interesting.
attempting to, yes, this is where this is happening. I'll put a comment in this episode of the Wall Street Journal article of the basically laptop server farms where homes with hundreds of laptops tuning into a local IP are falsely employed, and this has been uncovered by, yeah. So this is actually happening, and it's primarily targeting tech companies and their IP. And I'll put that article in the
Mm-hmm.
comments here. But that's full remote companies. If you're embracing full remote, protect yourself. Look for applicants that have meaningful connections on LinkedIn. If there's 3 connections and they're claiming to be at a FANG company, look into that, run references, check yourself. I think that ties into the RTO strategies that I'm seeing work. Let's thread this into the next topic. Let's see if I can weave
Yeah.
this in. So, RTO sometimes is a financially motivated decision,
Mm-hmm.
right? Offices are expensive.
Yep.
Budgets are changing. Budgets have changed quite a bit from the ZERPA era. We had just spend at all costs, and envelopes were huge, both in every org, really tightened the belt. We saw the tech downturn happen. There was a low in jobs, and I just posted some jobs data from TrueUp. I'll put that in the comments as well. The low was summer 23, and now we're at 35% increase from that as of last week. So
Mm-hmm.
things are improving. There's data that
Mm-hmm.
supports that. But budgets, where do they stand today? Tell me
Mm-hmm.
about what you're seeing, what you can share, and what you're seeing in the people industry in terms of the change in envelopes that people leaders are getting for spend.
Yeah, I think that one of the things, even before I get to that question, Anders, I want to just comment on the root of the question you're asking around something that I heard a term not too long ago. I just learned new, and you think you get to a certain age, you don't learn that much more. But gosh, I got a lot to learn. The concept of
In here.
numeracy, and it's financial literacy. And we talk a lot about literacy in terms of reading and writing for our school children, et cetera. We also have a meaningful number, I think, of people in corporate life, and even myself looking at my own career, I potentially was one of them, until probably too late in my career, where I developed an understanding and an appreciation of the financials we use to run the company.
Right.
That every one of your listeners and followers, I hope, could talk through the top 5 financial metrics that their company or organization uses to run their business. Anyone who's unable to do that may be farther from having an impact on the business than they might want to be.
Right.
And so the world has shifted, I think, insofar as the managing the financials of the company are no longer the total purview of the finance organization. The CFO in the company and the CEO, frankly, want and need everyone to be numerate in the company. to really be educated on the financials in the organization. And I think customers, consumers are getting a lot savvier,
Yeah.
a lot more educated about things. And obviously with a lot of these advent of technology, we can x-ray, SEC filings a lot faster to say, how's this company doing? Are the financials sound? If it's a pre-public company, what I can find online and ask educated questions in the interview process to know how sound is this organization? How well is it run? And then what will I be held accountable for when I get in terms of helping to drive those metrics forward? Not only at the local level in terms of my local job, my role, but also how do I influence the macro? Because all of us are stakeholders in that. At the end of the day, shareholders, most of us in our companies, these organizations. So I would just start out with that kind of macro point around numeracy, and drilling down into the micro question that you were asking around HR team budgets, people team budgets. Previously, and this is call it 5-6 years ago, I was seeing HR teams running between 4 and 6% of revenue. The cost to run the business. That has shifted meaningfully downward by at least 100 basis points to the left. And so we were at 4 to 6%. We're now at 3 to 5%. And so, for example, just full transparency, right now we're doing our annual operating plan. My target that I'm supposed to hit is 4.0%. I'm currently running 4.1%. So I got a little bit of a finger wag from my FP&A partner the other day and said, look, you're putting your budget together for next year. You got to shave a few bips off of your investments because we need you to get inside of the envelope. And very glad that they did that. I have a very clear target. And that then obviously influences all of the financial of the business of how much it costs us to run, what our burn rate is, our cash and AR on hand, all that stuff. And we've got to have that dialed in. And my team need to understand that as well. Certainly my directs, because it's how we are spending the portion of the company's budget that we've been asked to be stewards of. It's not my budget. It's my boss, Andrew's budget. It's all his money. It's all the company's money. I'm just allocated a portion of that to do a job in the organization. And I'm being asked to do a job with less funding than maybe I used to get in an organization because things have just shifted. There's just a sharper eye, a sharper lens on how companies are running their businesses. And, again, 5 years ago, you and I and all your listeners saw, growth at any cost. So it doesn't matter, just grow, don't care, burn as much cash as you want. You're in ZERP, as you just said, we'll get more money, we'll go raise a round, no problem. Those days are gone.
Long gone.
Right?
Yeah.
If you have to raise a round right now and you're not in a strong financial position, you're probably raising a down round. Not that that's always a terrible thing, but the prospect of having to raise a down round is not something that most companies look forward to. And it can have a really net negative effect, not only on your investors, obviously, but on your employees. Because they're going, wait a second, I got, if it's pre-public, a company that I got a stock issued at whatever X dollars a share. And now my refresh grant was issued at this new 409A that's way below what the other one was. And so those options are actually underwater now that I got a year ago. What the heck? So then you've got an employee engagement and retention issue on your hands as well. So there's lots of good reasons to avoid raising rounds when you don't have to and you don't want to. And a lot of that comes back from good financial discipline and having a numerate team throughout the organization who understand the criticality of running the company by the numbers.
So well said. And I think this is really important foreshadowing for what we'll talk about next. So we heard trends in the people HR budgets are trending down. Okay, so there's compression on spend. Okay, so what are those implications? Will you unpack for us what we spent quite a bit of time talking about in prep for the show was how do you think about spending the dollars in your envelope? So how does that tie into customer requirements versus bells and whistles that we're all pressured or maybe influenced or asked to buy and to spend on? Those might be some of the new AI tools out there. And maybe they save money, but maybe they don't.
Yeah.
But what is your mindset when thinking of spending based on your customers?
Yeah. That's the magic word, Anders, is the customer lens. What does our company do for our customers at the end of the day, the end user of our product, our technology, our service? And how does the people team drive and deliver that or help facilitate that? If we're unable to draw a red thread between the customer experience, the employee experience, and the candidate experience, we're missing a trick there. And we're investing in something or spending time or energy on something that is probably sub-optimized. So I just ran, I'm a Gartner customer, and I ran an HR maturity survey inside the organization. I had all of our e-staff respond to it, all of our HR business partners, and I obviously put my input as well. And what it gave us is a lens on across, kind of 20 different topics that you can do inside of a people function. What is the importance and how mature are we? And there were more than a couple of bars in that report where the maturity bar was higher than the importance line, which said another way, we are overspending or overinvesting in that area, that we are more mature than we think we need to be in that particular discipline or area. That's a real eye-opener because, and I said back to my colleagues as I was debriefing it, I said, if and when we, the people team, or I, your chief people officer, are coming to you with something that you say, hey, David, I think we're actually good enough there. Yep. Everything does not have to be, to borrow a line from Spinal Tap, to an 11, right? Yeah. We don't have to go to 11 on everything. Some things it's okay to be a 3 or a 4 out of 10 on. That's okay. Should we be a 0? No. But do we have to be 10 out of 10 on everything? No, because we can't. Because again, it's a fixed envelope. And oh, by the way, the envelope got smaller. So we're going to have to be much more judicious about where we're spending the time and energy and money that we have, and making sure that it's drawn very clearly back to what is the customer experience our company is delivering, and then how does that translate back into the employee experience that we're on the hook for as the people function to design and develop and deliver every day. And if you don't have that line of sight, my hypothesis is, are we sub-optimized? And there is a Pareto optimization of spend and input and impact that we should get to as an organization, and having that dialogue is the only way to get there.
So this is a nice segue into some of the programs under people in HR that we're seeing shift in the industry. So some hot takes here is that I'm certainly seeing spending and teams smaller than years past in groups such as L&D, DEI certainly, and many others. Tooling and infrastructure is sometimes being crammed down or consolidated, and many other. I just touched on a few topics, but tell me what your thoughts are on those programs and any others that you're seeing squeezed, and then what comes to mind after that?
Yeah, maybe we unpack each of those in sequence in order. The L&D one, I'm just giving myself feedback from years ago, that the L&D teams that we built and staffed oftentimes were based upon what I thought the company needed. It was kind of this like nanny state idea of like, well, here comes David, the chief people officer, and he'll tell you what you need. And here I am. I'm like, you will show up for the 4-day management training course, and you will fly in and you will stay at the Courtyard by Marriott, and we'll be in the Starlight Room for 4 days in those uncomfortable chairs, and you'll like it. And then people showed up, you got half the room standing up in the back because they're falling asleep. You got like half a piece of bacon falling out of your mouth because you overate at the breakfast buffet. We've all been there. Yep. And then you leave, right? You've been there for 3 days. You fly out of, Illinois or wherever you were all gathered, and you're on the plane or whatever. You open your inbox and it's this long because you've been offline for 3 days, and you kind of walk out there and you're like, I probably got 2 to 3 hours of value from that, 24 business hour investment. Well, that's a terrible ROI. And oh, by the way, the opportunity cost that I've taken for the business to take all those folks offline, customers who've not been sold to, serviced, marketed to, products that haven't been built or innovated. That's a huge trade-off. And I think sometimes we forget the cost of running that training course is not only taking down the Starlight Ballroom at the Courtyard by Marriott in Skokie, Illinois, just to be real specific about it. I don't even know if that exists, but it's a good image. And the airplanes and the hotels and the dinners and all that. It is the opportunity cost that we've taken offline. So all those salaries, all that opportunity cost, and then all the programmatic cost. You could easily burn through $500,000, no problem, in 1 week of one of these mandatory training classes. Then the question is, do you get anywhere close to that level of value? And I would give myself some constructive feedback from years past that maybe not. And did I really, really think hard about that? And frankly, were the managers and senior leaders saying to me, okay, David, we'll do it just because that's what HR said. That's what we go in and do the thing. Whereas now I think our clients are much more educated and much more empowered to push back and say, I don't think we need that. And am I listening? Am I paying attention to that? And then am I building and running the L&D function in the HR shop in a way that aligns to that? And what that probably means is much more tailored, individually driven, real-time, just-in-time, snackable learning content. Yes. That's a much different way. And if you look at anybody on their phone today out in society, they're probably doing this finger. We're going to have a It's like tennis
Infinite
elbow, but
scroll, hyper
it's like
personalization. Oh
it's
yeah.
TikTok elbow or TikTok thing
Yeah.
here, because we're swiping and we're scrolling. We
Yep.
learn in these 30-second snackable chunks. And Anders, when you publish this podcast, you'll probably chunk it up into little snippets of things that you want people to consume that you'll put on different social media, A. And then B, most of your listeners are probably listening at 1.2 or 1.5x right now. I'll apologize to them because I talk fast already, so you're probably really getting like a
You're already at 2x
1.75 maybe.
speed.
So, that's just how we consume information. And so this idea that then I'm going to, as a CPO, take someone offline for 3 days, cram a bunch of stuff down their throat that they'll remember a tenth of and call it good, that's not me speaking in the language of the business. That's not me being a steward and being numerate about how I'm running my part of the business. So that's the first one on the L&D side. So that's A. Then B, you mentioned the DEI. And one of the things that, one data point and then one observation. The data point is in the last 12 months, and I don't have the stat in front of me per se, but I'm pretty sure it's directionally correct. We have seen an absolute drop off of the mention of DEI and ESG in SEC filings from companies. It has trailed off massively. And I won't comment on the societal factors or the reasons or whatever. It's just a data point that it has almost all but disappeared from these SEC filings, which is where we see how companies talk about what they're doing to run the business and what they're putting focus on. In addition, we've also seen these companies talking about how they are, in public companies, most recently, most prominent was Walmart, I saw, was really de-investing or disinvesting in some of their DEI programming. On the one hand, at a human level, there's a part of me that stings, because for the last 10 years of my career at least, I've been really focused on how do we help people feel and know that they are in a more diverse, more equitable, and more inclusive organization. And I think that's just a good human thing to do. The learning that I've come to in the last 6 or 12 months, I suppose, is the DEI elements are great. That is not actually the goal. And the goal was articulated to me by one of my team members, and she did a wonderful job saying that. She said, David, it's one thing to know where the party is and when it's happening. It's one thing to be invited to the party and be at the party. She said, but it's a whole other thing to get asked, hey, do you want to contribute to the playlist of the music we're going to listen to at the party? And she said, that is the essence of belonging. And the B is really where it's at. She said the DEI, and this is a DEI leader who said this to me. So this woman makes her bread and butter out of this, right? So I know I was talking to the real deal here. She said the DEI can get very performative and very congratulatory. Yep, we've done all the right, good job, Jenkins. You did all the right plays on DEI.
Yeah.
Have you delivered the B? Do people feel they belong in the organization? If they don't, then you've just been spending a lot of time and money making yourself feel better and just posturing and positioning and being performative about things. The evolution that I think is happening in the industry right now that I think is a really good thing is focusing on how do we drive the outcome we're trying to achieve, which is belonging. And this, Anders, goes back to my earlier point. The nature of human beings has not changed in the last 100,000 years. We gather around a fire, we cook meat, and we laugh, cry, and talk together. So bringing people together, is at the nature and the essence of belonging. And are we behaving in a way culturally that let people feel like they are meant to be there, like they belong? And that is a very most basic good human behavior that we can all be doing. It does not need a massive team to do it. It does not need, certification courses. It just needs some real talk from real humans to each other to say, who are we? How do we show up? And what do we believe in? And if we believe in making sure people feel welcomed and belong, here, what are the behaviors inside that culture that we're going to do? So I think there's an evolution from the DEI kind of virtue signaling pieces to truly investing in things that help people feel they belong. Now, that does include a lot of the education and materials about how do I make sure that I'm operating in an inclusive way, using inclusive language, being sensitive to people's different journeys, et cetera. Those are all good things. That's going to come in a much more snackable learning environment than me having, again, a 3-day class on being a diverse, equitable, inclusive manager. They don't learn that way anymore. No one does. So certainly not our adults. And so that's a shift, L&D plus DEI, those two elements. And those, I think, are things that we've just got to be really mindful of as we're making those investments. The last one you touched on, I'll touch on briefly, is the technology aspect. Technology budgets are much more scrutinized. If your listeners are anything like me, and all love for my CFO colleague, I love him dearly. We're wonderful colleagues. The CFO role has a much more influential role in acquisition and procurement than it used to, right? So the other day, I have a vendor that I've got a relationship with. It's a 6-figure relationship. I had a very small, just over 4-figure, just under 5-figure addition to that. So less than a 10% increase on it. That contract had to go all the way back through the procurement process, and the CFO had to re-sign the contract for what was a very small, relatively small uplift because it was an upsell. I needed something else with this vendor. Fine. Yep. It's gone back to the process. Wow. The nature of software acquisition has changed, and the CFO has a much more outsized influence in that. So calibrating for that, being mindful of it, our software budgets are much more scrutinized. A related fact to that is we no longer, I don't think, can staff huge people analytics teams. There's a requirement for people to be much more numerate in terms of running the HR business by the numbers, using the technologies that we have and are coming online. I just launched one of them myself, Culture Amp. Just bought a company called Orgnostic. They're calling it People Analytics. So they have a new dimension of the Culture Amp app, which is People Analytics. I was one of their first customers after the acquisition. And we've now created dashboards for every sub-department in HR. And I said to all of them, I want you to create what are the top 10 metrics you need to run your part of the business. I expect you to be running it with that dashboard. We don't have a people analytics team of human beings. You can go, hey, pull me this information from Workday and put a pivot table and give me a presentation. Nope. You log onto the tool, you look at it, you put your own filters in there, you ask your own questions, and you draw your own hypotheses and conclusions from it. That's required in every part of our business now. So the big people analytics teams, I think, are going to be reduced, maybe not in the huge companies, but certainly in the medium and small companies. And the technology will be able to help us there. At the same time, when we're procuring that technology, the CFO has a much larger role to play in that procurement than they did before. That budget is, yes, it's mine, but it's going to go through a procurement process where the CFO is staring at a lot more than he or she or they used to.
So well said. I think all of those, that anecdotal evidence and those thoughts on L&D and DEI and the B being the end goal with belonging and tooling and infrastructure are all present day observations that you're seeing. So let's look at the crystal ball here, David. You know, when we reconnect in episode 2 in 2025, right? 12 months from now, and then maybe 24 months from now, tell us the trends or what the present day will feel like in 1 year and 2 years, because things are changing so quickly in tech. And certainly as people leaders, we have to, adapt quickly. So what do you think will be the state of affairs a year or 2 years from now?
Yeah, I'll draw on a comment from my colleague. So our talent acquisition function at Illumio is run by Jennifer Anker-Kaufman. We call her Jack. And I said to her the other day, what are you seeing in the market? And she said, David, I'm seeing more recruiters getting jobs right now.
It's true.
And she said, that's the canary in the coal mine. And she said, when companies are hiring recruiters, they're getting ready to do some hiring. And she said, I don't think it's going to return to the days of yore where it was, just a deluge of hires, but companies are opening their aperture. So that was a perspective from a talent acquisition leader herself, who is seeing her own colleagues in the industry as that canary in the coal mine. So that's one. The second one, we just came out of our normal board meeting cycle, and we have a wonderful board at Illumio with some very accomplished executives on it who are practitioners in their own right and board members in a number of other notable companies. The tone and tenor in the board meeting most recently was one that reflected an optimism about the market that I don't think we've had in the last at least 3 to 5 years, call it. Agreed. And some of that was influenced, of course, by coming out of the pandemic, et cetera. But I also think there's just the general changeover that's going to be happening certainly on the 20th of January in terms of how the markets respond to that. I'm not making a political commentary there. This is not a political podcast. It's just simply a reflection. If we look at the market that has taken place after the election, that message that's gotten there, and the posture that we're now seeing from executives, board members, buyers, we're even seeing that with our own customers at Illumio. They're saying, okay, I'm going to be able to make some investments that I wasn't sure. They were kind of on hold or whatever. We were just going to wait and see. Markets hate uncertainty. And so regardless, the election is finished. We have no uncertainty. We know who's going to be in the White House 20th of January. And companies are turning to getting back to the business of investment and growing their companies. Again, nothing to do with politics, simply just the nature of business and where people are making investments. That we're seeing hiring, we're seeing investment, we're seeing an uptick in that. So 12 months from now, Anders, I hope when you and I talk, hopefully not that long from now, just check in with each other because I love what you do for us. I think we're going to see more of that activity and positive movement in the market more broadly, which is, I think, good for everything because that rising tide is going to lift all the ships. It's going to drive innovation. It's going to drive employment rate. It's going to give people new jobs and opportunities. Growth and development and learning will happen. I think that's a great thing. And we're very fortunate, certainly in the U.S. where I live and I'm a citizen of, we're blessed to have that, overall in our economy. And we're in a good spot right now. There's still a lot of good hard work to be done. A lot of people without jobs who are struggling and in pain around our world. At the same time, I think we've got an opportunity to really take advantage of some good signals that are happening in the market to grow and develop these companies, a lot of whom are doing really good things for the world.
Yeah, well said. Just to echo some of those points I'm seeing is the reduction in uncertainty has certainly led to this increase in optimism. Certainly markets are suggesting that. I think
Mm-hmm.
NASDAQ hit an all-time high just a couple days ago, and we're starting to see that continue. There's certainly a surge in full-time and contract recruiters starting new roles today, tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
and through January, which does signal a kind of a trickle-down hiring from FANG companies or Fortune 50s on down through startups. Certainly seeing that
Mm-hmm.
as well. Also seeing companies that had, poor financials are still reeling from that. There's still layoffs happening. So there's
Yeah.
two truths. So I think a year from now, I think that there will still be prudence and a focus on profits. I think
Mm-hmm.
growth will be driven by the unit economics and the financial status of these companies. And I don't think we're going to see the Zerpa style hyper growth at all costs environment that
Yeah,
we
I agree.
did. Although some companies that are receiving some blank check or large funding rounds, mostly in
Mm-hmm.
like sectors like AI, are rapidly growing, and we're seeing that
Mm-hmm.
be true. And so, I don't know what the reality will be, but my hope and the feeling that I have is that a year from now it will be much better, and 2 years from now we might have some leveling off from that. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
crossing
agree, and I
my
think
fingers for
we're
this.
seeing it right now. Just sort of there are a lot
Yeah,
of planes on the runway. I fly a lot for work, but there are a lot of planes on the runway right now in the market waiting to go public. And we're starting to see some of those. We're hearing S1s being drafted. We're going to start seeing some of those go out. We've had a couple of them even in the last month or so. So we're going to see more of those. I think there are going to be more companies
more
that have been on
liquidity,
the runway ready to go. And I think it'll be the big ones, first, the Stripes and those folks of the world. Then
data
there'll be kind
breaks.
of like the big mids, and then there'll be some ones that are in the middle of the size thing that have solid financials, solid growth rates that'll be coming. Call it maybe early to mid 26 after these first ones kind of come out. And so I hope that kind of moves through. In addition, we're seeing, and this is from talking to the good folks on Wall Street, a lot of the investors and folks who take companies public, they're saying if it's a company that's run solidly financially, that is growing in the mid to high 20s, that is solid. That
Oh,
is
yeah,
desirable. Those are companies that will go public. Rewind the clock 3-4 years ago, you had to be growing in the 30s, 40s, 50s
40s. Yeah,
to
yeah.
be able to be considered for that. That's shifting. That responsible growth with good financial management and good hygiene, where there's product market fit, those are the companies I think they're going to be able to be moving forward. If public life is what they desire, they're going to be able to do that.
Well said. Well said. So, David, want to thank you for joining the show today. I've
My
learned a lot
pleasure.
in our conversations. I hope our listeners have too. In the comments, there will be some articles that we referenced on this call today. Check us out on Spotify and YouTube, and the full episode will be available in the comments here. So, thanks again for tuning in, everyone. And thanks, David, for joining us on the Lean In podcast.
Thanks, Tom. It's been my pleasure. Take care.